Victober is coming. It's almost here. Victober is coming. Victober is coming. Victober is coming. Hello, it is the Victober TBR time. The Victober TBR time. It has finally come around once again, and I am so excited. I've been thinking about it all day. Let's just dive into this. I have a few things that are not Victober related that I'm going to get out of the way very quickly, and then we will focus in on what I am reading in order to celebrate Victober. If you're not familiar, Victober is the invention of one Katie Lumsden from Books and Things, and it is now led by 4 wonderful women who I am going to link their videos below. They will talk you through their suggestions for their prompt that they picked. More to come. But let's get through the other things on my TBR first. So I have my computer open and I have stacks of books all around me, but I just got home from work on a Friday and whoa, was it a day of work? Let's just dive into this very, very quickly. First of all, I have a couple of spooky books. It is October, so I am going to read some thrillers and some spooky-ish books as well as Victober books. And my first one that I will show you is my book of the month pick, and that is The Stranger Upstairs. From what I understand, this book is about a woman, maybe a man and a woman, who buy a house, a murder house, and they are going to refurbish it. I think they're trying to flip it. And then things start going terribly wrong. So I am, of course, interested in this, but of course, also, I have not read too much about it. I am also going to read Witch Haven. This one is about turn of the century, I think, New York. A girl thinks she's going to a sanatorium, only to find out that the sanatorium is actually a school for witches. So I'm excited about this. Again, I don't know much about it, so I'm gonna read those spooky books. It's also the month that my Shakespeare group is reading Macbeth, so that's perfect. I'm not quite teaching it yet in 8th grade. I teach it every year, but won't do that for a couple months, so that doesn't line up. I'll read it many times this year, as I normally do. I'm also going to get from Libby, from the Libby app at my library, I'm going to get Diane Setterfield's Bellman and Black. This one is about a boy who disturbs, maybe kills, I'm not sure, a blackbird when he's little. He grows up and has children, gets married, has a wife, like normal life, only to discover that the blackbirds want revenge. If you've read anything by Diane Setterfield, I think you know the feel of it, the mood of it, and I think it's going to be quite fun. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm sure there's more to it than that, but that's all I've read. That's all I want to know. I'm also going to listen to The Undertaking of Heart and Mercy. Hart is a marshal tasked with patrolling the strange and magical wilds of Tanria. It's an unforgivable job, and Hart's got nothing but time to ponder his loneliness. Mercy never has a moment to herself. She's been single-handedly keeping Birdsall and Son undertakers afloat in defiance of sullen jerks like Hart, who seems to have a gift for showing up right when her patience is thinnest. After yet another exasperating run-in with Mercy, Hart finds himself penning a letter addressed simply to a friend, quote unquote. Much to his surprise, an anonymous letter comes back in return, and a tentative friendship is born. If only Hart knew he's been bearing his soul to the person who infuriates him most, Mercy. As the dangers from Tenaria grow closer, so do the unlikely correspondence. But can their blossoming romance survive the fated discovery that their pen pals are their worst nightmares, each other? So this one has like these like skeleton hands on the outside and stuff. I think there might be a little bit of a spooky element. I think though that mainly it's going to be a feel-good romance. Sounds sweet and cute and wonderful. and there are undertakers involved. So October. And then I'm going to listen to this one as well, but this one is not scary and it is not Victorian. It just appealed to me, so I grabbed it from the Libby app. This is The Only Purple House in Town by Anne Aguirre. And it says, Iris Collins is the messy one in her family, the chaos bunny. Her sisters are all wildly successful, while she can't balance her budget for a single month. It's no wonder she's in debt to her roommates when she unexpectedly inherits a house from her great aunt. Her plan to turn it into a B&B fails, as most of her plans do. She winds up renting rooms like a Victorian spinster, collecting other lost souls, and not all of them are quote unquote human. So it is Victober, Victorian spinster, and it is creepy. They're not all human. I'm not going to read any further because it already sounds awesome. So those are the kind of creepy-ish books that I'm going to read in honor of October. I also have some series that I will continue to make progress with. I'm going to read the last book in the Austen family series. I can't believe we've already got to the point where I'm reading the last one, but here it is. I love these books so much, and I have loved revisiting them this year. I'm going to read the last book in the Wildwood Chronicles. Still working my way through the second book, not loving it like I did the first, but it's okay. It's okay. I'm hoping I will love the third and final installment. And I'm going to be reading the second book in the Winter House series. This is Winter Stroll by Ellen Hildebrand. And this is about the Quinn family and their trials and tribulations. And they all kind of center around a winter theme. And I started reading, or Christmas theme, and I started reading them last month, or the month that I'm recording this in September, so that I can be reading the final book in the month of December. Now I have some Victober-adjacent reads. I will be continuing with two series. I'll be reading the final book in M.V. Hughes' A London Home in the 1890s. And while this does take place in the Victorian era and is written by a person who lived in the Victorian era, it was not written in the Victorian era, and therefore I can't count it for Victober. But it is Victober-adjacent, and I will be completing the series by reading this one in October. Same goes for MMK's Enchanted Evening. Now, by the time we get to this one, which is the final book in this trilogy of memoirs, we are no longer anywhere near the Victorian period, but the series started, her series of memoirs started deep in the Victorian period, and so I still kind of think of it as Victorian. Not written in the Victorian period, this one does not take place during the Victorian period, but still in my mind, Victorian adjacent. So, Victober adjacent. And then I have two works of fiction that are Victober adjacent that I would like to read. One is The Dickens Boy by Thomas Keneally. This is, I probably said his last name very incorrectly. There it is right there. But this is the author of books like Schindler's List. And in this, he's undertaken to write about one of Dickens's sons who goes to Australia to make his fortune, to make his own way. And I think he's maybe the black sheep of the Dickens family. And I do believe this is based on true events, but it is a fictionalized account. So we've got The Dickens Boy, fiction that is Victober adjacent. And we have Simon Maurer's Ancestry, a novel. And if you can't see it there, I love this. I love that so much. So from what I understand of this, he's done some research into the lives of some real people. Maybe they're real, maybe they're not real. They might just be based on like an amalgamation of some real people from the Victorian era at a certain address, I think. And he's going to tell their story, but he's also going to have the story of their future generations. So the children and grandchildren, great-grandchildren of the main characters who are in the Victorian period. I'll report back and tell you more about what it's about when I've actually read it. But from what I understand, it's going to be some kind of dual timeline, but it's focusing on Victorian characters and how their lives influence the lives of people in the present day who are somehow related to them or tied to them in some way. So, 2 Victorian adjacent books for Victober. Editing Jenna here. I forgot 2 books, 2 more Victober adjacent books, both of my nonfictions. So I have this one coming to me from Book Outlet, and I'm very excited about it. I've been wanting to read it all year and have been waiting until Victober, and then I was just going to listen to it on Libby, but then I saw that it was on sale at Book Outlet, so I ordered a copy. And that is Dickens and Prince. So this one says, every so often, and it's by Nick Hornby, who wrote About a Boy, which is one of my absolute favorite movies. I don't love his fiction all that much, but I am very intrigued by this. So every so often, a pairing comes along that seems completely unlikely until it's not. Peanut butter and jelly, Dennis Rodham and Kim Jong-un, ducks and puppies, and now Dickens and Prince. And I have no idea where he's going to go with this, but it's adjacent, and I'm going to read it. And I've been looking forward to it all year. I think it came out at the end of last year. And then also, I'm going to listen to, and that may prove to be less than ideal, but I am going to listen to The Dress Diary by Kate Strasden. And this says that in 1838, a young woman was given a diary on her wedding day, collecting snippets of fabric from a range of garments, some her own, others donated by family and friends. She carefully annotated each one, creating a unique record of their lives. Her name was Mrs. Anne Sykes. So, as I said, I may end up buying this one. It's been on hold at my library since it released a few months ago, and no motion toward getting the physical copy. And I do want to read it during Victober, so I may end up buying a copy, and I don't think I'll regret that. I think it's going to be a book that I'm going to absolutely love and want to read again and again and again, but we shall see. So, those 2 books, Editing Jenna, out. Now comes the Victober TBR, and I'm so excited about the Victober TBR. There are 5 prompts. There was one, are there 5 leaders? There must be 5 leaders. 5 wonderful women lead this, and they each came up with a prompt. I said 4 before, but there are 5. And I will link all 5 below. There is a group read, which I am not going to read, and I'll explain why in a moment, but they are reading The Way We Live Now as a group read by Anthony Trollope. I will explain in a moment why I am not doing that, but there are 5 prompts, and I will be reading something for each prompt. So we've got the first prompt featuring a stranger. Then the second prompt is new woman fiction. The third prompt is an author who's new to me. The fourth is written in the first person. And the fifth is something having to do with and exploring class distinctions, class differences. So the first book I'm going to talk about is also technically adjacent, kind of. It is not new women fiction. It's not new to me. It's not written in the first person, and it'll definitely at some point in some way be about class, and there may be strangers. Probably are. But the reason that I say it's adjacent is because most of it was not written exactly in the Victorian period. Most of it was written a little bit before the Victorian period, but it is an author who we always associate with the Victorian period. It is an author who I've read almost everything by, but there are still a few outliers. And that is Charles Dickens. I am so excited to have some new to me Charles Dickens stuff to read, and this is going to be Sketches by Boz. It's a collection of the sketches that he wrote under the pseudonym of Boz before he wrote the Pickwick Papers. And I'm going to read them. They're not a cohesive anything. I'm sure some of them relate and maybe there are some through characters, but for the most part, it's going to be a bunch of silly sketches by Boz, of individuals in London life. And it's going to be very early writing. And if you're not a fan of the first part of Pickwick, you might not be a fan of this, but I really love Pickwick and that whole tone and the like character sketches and all of those things. So I think I'm really going to enjoy this and I'm looking forward to reading it. So part of it does get written during the first year of the Victorian era, but I don't know if I can really count it as a Victober read. So I'm going to call it Victober-adjacent. I am going to read Orley Farm by Anthony Trollope, and this is why I am not reading The Way We Live Now, because I had already decided that I wanted to read a Trollope, and I had already decided that I wanted to read Orley Farm. I read up on several of his books. I've read the Barchester series except for the final book, and really I probably should pick that one up, but I really just don't love it as much as so many people do. But I do feel a hankering for a slow kind of melodrama type of Victorian book, and I do have a hankering for some Trollope, and that's not like me, but I do feel that. And so I read up on some of his books and decided on Orley Farm, and then they announced that they were going to do The Way We Live Now. I'm not sad about it. I feel good about my choice, but I am not doing the group read because I'm not going to read two big old chunky Trollopes in 1 month. I'm not going to do it. I'm good, but I'm not that good. So this one is for my focus on class. I don't know for a fact that it's about class, but it's by Trollope, so I'm going to make that assumption. It says that Trollope singled out Orley Farm for its successful combination of realistic and sensational effects, which he felt to be the highest achievement of the novelist. It was greatly admired by his contemporaries, including George Eliot and G.H. Lewes. The novel centers on a case of forgery and the anguish, guilt, and pathos of the central character, Lady Mason. Youthful marriage choices, middle-aged marital crisis, and the moving love and loss of an elderly man revolve around the legal action and the complex portrayal of Lady Mason, who is both sympathetic and wily. So I'm going to leave it at that, but I was in the mood for a sympathetic and wily female main character. Next, I'm going to read a new to me author, and this is a book I've wanted to read for a long time. This is R.D. Blackmore's Lorna Doone. I have never read Lorna Doone, and I actually don't even know what the story is, but one of my best friends in college, her mom was named Lorna after Lorna Doone. I remember that. So I am definitely going to read Lorna Doone. And it says, an unsophisticated farmer falls in love with the beautiful and aristocratic Lorna Doone, kidnapped as a child by the outlaw Doones on Exmoor. That's all I want to know. I have already read the first chapter of this, and I really like it. I went ahead and read the first chapter because I heard some people saying that it was boring, and I wanted to make sure that I was going to be able to do it. And I am. I was very intrigued. For my first person narrative and a new to me author, I'm going to read a nonfiction. I'm going to read the diaries of Margaret Fontaine, collected in Love Among the Butterflies. These are the diaries of a wayward, determined, and passionate Victorian lady, and they are excerpts that were written during the Victorian era, so I'm going to count them, and they are in the first person, so it fits that. I think she travels and goes all over the place. I think she even goes to Tibet, which is awesome. I've been to Tibet, love Tibet, and I would love to see what a Victorian woman thinks of Tibet. I was feeling the need for some adventure stories, and so I think Lorna Doone is an adventure story, and of course, Traveling Victorian Woman is an adventure story. And I have 2 other adventure stories on my list. One of them features a stranger, I'm assuming, and it is called Kidnapped by Robert Louis Stevenson. I've read Treasure Island, but I've never read Kidnapped, and I'm excited about this one. I really don't know anything about it. I just know that it will be an adventure story, and I wanted an adventure story. Also new to me, and also I think featuring a stranger, and also an adventure story, The Prisoner of Zinda by Anthony Hope. Look how adventure that is. This one is about a guy who looks like the heir to an imaginary kingdom. Like, it's real in the book, but in the world it doesn't exist. He's a British guy, but he looks a lot like the king of a different country, and chaos and madness and adventure ensue. So it is about a stranger, and it is a new to me author, and it is adventure, and I'm really craving some adventure books. I am also going to read this one, which I don't think meets any of the criteria, but I am in the mood for it. Not a new to me author. It might deal with class. I'm not sure. There might be a stranger. I'm not sure. But I'm going to read George MacDonald's The Maiden's Bequest. It's a compelling story of a young man's search and a young woman's gift. I think there's like a love triangle in this one, and it probably will deal with class. Many of George MacDonald's books do, but it's been a long time since I've read one of these old George MacDonald romances that have been kind of retold with the help of Michael Phillips. These were very popular back in the 90s and early 2000s, and my uncle really enjoyed all of these books. He's the reason I read the first one that I read, The Shepherd's Apprentice, and then throughout college I would read them every once in a while, but I haven't read one in a very long time, and so I am excited to read this one. It is Victorian. George MacDonald was a Scottish Victorian. People on BookTube tend to read The Princess and Curdie like his children's fantasy fiction, so they'll read The Princess and Curdie, or The Princess and the Goblins, or the Light Princess, is that what it's called? Something like that. At the Back of the North Wind, those books. But he actually wrote a lot more adult romances and sermons, but a lot more adult romances than he wrote children's fiction. And so I'm excited to read this one, finally. And then for the new woman category, which is Katie's, and is maybe the hardest to wrap your mind around what fits. Like, you understand the concept, but what books actually fit the prompt was a little bit complex, I think. So I just took a suggestion straight from her video. I'm going to read Mary Cholmondeley. I'm probably butchering that, but Mary Cholmondeley's Red Pottage. Now, a new woman book, it's also a new to me author, but a new woman book, I think, if I understand correctly, is written in the later, like, 4th of the Victorian era, and it is about, it's kind of like a proto-feminist or a feminist take on the life of a woman in Victorian England. So, a forward-thinking woman in some way, shape, or form. It didn't seem that it needed to be a book written by a woman. It could be a book written about a woman by a man, but it needed to be some kind of forward-thinking, forward-moving, new expression of womanhood, of autonomy or empowerment, sort of a vein. Like I said, a little bit more complex. And also written in the last 4th, I think, of the Victorian era. So I just went straight with a suggestion from her. And I'm not even exactly sure what it's about, but I picked the one that I could get for free on Kindle and on Audible. So I am going to probably mostly listen to this one. I don't think it's a great production for it, but I do think that it will be an okay listen. And yeah, I'm excited. I'm just going to read the synopsis that I found online. It says, handsome and magnanimous Hugh Scarlett has never had a hard time with romance. Having recently ended an affair with a local aristocrat, he caught the eye of Rachel West, a young heiress who seems unaware of his reputation as a womanizer. Rachel, both naive and strong-willed, shares everything with her friend Hester Gressley, a pastor's daughter who longs to make it as a professional writer. As she struggles to overcome the animosity of her mother, a self-righteous minister, the animosity of her brother. I was like, whoa, that is forward-thinking. A female minister? No, the animosity of her brother, a self-righteous minister. Hester looks to Rachel for guidance. Funny and tragic, Red Pottage is a timeless story of friendship that explores the lives of women in a world controlled by men. So I am hopeful. I am hopeful because it says funny and tragic. If it were just tragic, I probably would have gone with something else. But funny and tragic, free audio, free Kindle. So I'm gonna go for it. And that is it. That is it. I can't wait for Victober to start. I'm so excited. But I am also very hungry and I need to go eat and edit this and get it out into the world. Victober is coming, friends. It's so close. It's almost time. Are you gonna read anything for Victober? Do you think I'll actually make it through all of those books? No, I don't know what she's chewing on. But I'm gonna go find out. Let's go read.